Today's lesson is on equations containing radicals. Equations containing radicals. Now, these can get a little confusing, so make sure you pay close attention. Equations containing radicals. All right, a radical equation is just an equation containing a radical, of course. Containing a radical, such as this. It's 2x minus 1. Write it very well. There we go. So this is an equation containing a radical, so we need to solve these equations. The good thing about these is there are actually steps to it. The bad thing about these is you actually have to check your answer because sometimes it doesn't work. So make sure you check your answer. You're going to find some that don't work. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to look at this equation. And I'm going to write my steps. So my first step is, number 1 is isolate the radical. Isolate the radical. So, of course, you know what isolate means. Isolate the radical means, yeah, you get the radical on one side by itself. Well, this one, the radical is already isolated. Okay, so we're just going to say it is already isolated. So why do we need that step? Well, this time they're not. I just started out pretty simple here. So the second thing you're going to do is, depending on what the index is, this index is a 2. So number 2. This one's a 2, so I'm going to square both sides. Now, had it been a cube root, I would have cubed both sides. So whatever the index is, that's what I'm going to do to both sides because I'm trying to get rid of the radical sign. This one I have a square. Okay, so we're going to take this and I'm going to do a little rewrite here. And I'm going to square both sides. Well, what happens here is I'm going to take the square root and I'm going to square it. So this is going to go away. So I have 2x minus 1. Okay, my son called in the middle of filming. So here we are. I'm going to square a square root. When I square a square root, I get what's underneath that radical sign, equals 9. My third step, step number 3, is I'm going to solve for x, or for my variable, whatever my variable happens to be. I have an x here, so it's x. To do that, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. I have 2x. This goes to 0, equals 10. I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and I have x equals 5. So I got 5. Now the problem is, when you start squaring stuff like this, things go wrong. And the answer doesn't always work. So you're going to check it. So what I would do is, I would check it. If it works, then I know I have it right. If it doesn't work, then you might want to make sure you did the work right. And if you did some of the work wrong, then you're going to get a new answer. But then if it doesn't work, then that answer isn't going to work. And I'll show you that a little bit later on. So here's my check. So I'm going to check this guy. I'm going to take this 5 and I'm going to put it back into the original equation. So here my step 4 is check answers, plural. This one only has 1, but yeah, we're going to get some that have more than 1. Check answers. They may not work. put x into original radical equation. Okay, so this says check answers, they may not work, put x into original radical equations. So I'm going to take my 5, I'm going to put it back into here, I'm going to see if it works. So what I have for my check is square root 2 times 5 minus 1 equals 3. So I have square root 10 minus 1 equals 3, square root 9 equals 3, or 3 equals 3. And yeah, it works. It checks. 5 is a solution. So one of my only solution here is 5. And that's how I do that problem. Okay, but yeah, you gotta check and make sure. Alright, if you don't have all the notes, pause the video, make sure that you have all of the notes. And I'm going to erase and start again here. Okay, here is a new equation. So here's an example with x squared result. Okay, what do we do with that? So here's an example with an x squared result. It's the same steps as before. All you're going to do is, this is a square root, so I'm going to square both sides. So I'm going to take that, square both sides. When I square square root, I'm going to square a square root. That just gives me what's under that radical sign. So I have 7x minus 12 equals x squared. But I'm solving for x. Okay, so what do I do? Well, you know what to do. You're going to have to get 0 on one side and everything else on the other side. So I'm going to subtract 7x, add 12 to both sides. Subtract 7x, add 12 to both sides. That gives me 0 over here. X squared minus 7x plus 12 is what I get on the other side. So I have 0 on one side and this on the other side. So what do I have to do with something that looks like this? What do you think? Yeah, you're going to have to factor it. Remember factoring? We just did a bunch of factoring. So what you have is 0 equals, and I'm going to factor two numbers. When I multiply them together, I get 12. When I multiply them together, I get 12. And when I add them together, I get negative 7. So what I'm thinking there is a negative, let's see, how about 3 and 4? Negative 3 and negative 4. So I have then x minus 4 equals 0, or I have x minus 3 equals 0. This is going to give me x equals 4. This is going to give me x equals 3. Okay, so two possibilities, and right now they're just possibilities because I did all this squaring and sometimes they don't work. So I'm going to have to go and check it. So here's my check. I'm going to go into the original equation. This time I'm going to have to check two different numbers. I'm going to go back into the original equation. So I'm going to put that 4 in. So I have square root 7 times 4, right, minus 12 equals 4. So 7 times 4 is 28. 28 minus 12 is 16. So I have square root 16 equals 4, and 4 equals 4. And yeah, that checks out. Okay, and then this one I'm going to put back into the original equation. So I have 7 times 3 minus 12 equals 3 this time. 7 times 3 is 21. 21 minus 12 is 9. So I have square root 9 equals 3, or 3 equals 3. And that checks too. So they both checked out. They're both okay. So my answer then is 3, 4. And there you go. Get those notes down. Okay, now we're gonna do one that's more complicated. So let's look at this one that's a little more complicated. So this example is a more complex single radical. Okay, so it's a more complex single radical. Oh, so what does that mean? If I'm telling you single radical, well, there must be some that aren't single radicals. Oh yeah, there are. Those are the ones that get pretty hard. Okay, but let's concentrate on this one. So what I have is 3 square root x plus 1 minus x equals 1. Let's go ahead and get that written down. The very first thing I'm going to do, my step 1, is isolate the radical. Okay, well, so I need to isolate the radical. I'm not really concerned about this 3. I'm going to just leave that. I'll show you how it works out pretty well. But I am concerned about this x. I can't have the x there, so I'm going to go ahead and add x to both sides. That gives me 3 square root x plus 1 equals 1 plus x. Okay, so I isolated the radical. Now I have a square root, so I'm going to square both sides. I'll show you one that's cubed. I think I have that on my notes here. Squaring both sides squared. This is going to be, I'm going to have to square the 3. So I have 9 times this quantity x plus 1. Over here, this is squared. You don't just give the 2 to the 1 and the 2 to the x, right? It's 1 times. This is really, over here in our big thought bubble, this is really 1 plus x times 1 plus x. I'm going to multiply that together. That gives me 1 plus 2x plus x squared. I know you already know how to do that. I'm going to put that right in here. And now I'm just solving for x. So I'm going to distribute the 9. I think I'm going to, this is all addition, so I can use that commutative property that allows me to change places with everything. So I'm going to go x squared plus 2x plus 1 instead. I'm going to subtract 9x from both sides. This is going to go to 0. I have x squared minus 7x minus 8. And then I'm going to factor it. So I have 0 equals x times x. Two numbers, when you multiply them together, you get 8, negative 8. When you add them together, you get a negative 7. All right, well, it must be negative 8 and a positive 1, I'm thinking. So x minus 8 equals 0, or x plus 1 equals 0. One of those two things has to be true. That's that multiplication property. Zero product property. Okay, so what I'm going to get here is x equals 8, and what I get here is x equals negative 1. So there's my two possibilities. Well, let's see if they work. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to have to do a check. I have x equals 8. I have x equals negative 1. I have to check them. If I don't check them, it could be that they're not right. I know they've been all working out so far, it's just lovely, but it doesn't always happen. There's your warning. This is solved like before. Okay, so I'm just going to put it back into the original. So I have 3 times square root 8 plus 1 minus 8 equals 1. Sorry, this is 3 times square root 9 minus 8 equals 1. Or 3 times 3 minus 8 equals 1, or 9 minus 8 equals 1, and 1 equals 1, and that one does work, so that's good. Here I'm going to have 3 square root negative 1 plus 1 minus negative 1 equals 1. So I have 3 square root 0 plus 1 equals 1. This is going to go to 0, so I have plus 1 equals 1, and that checks out. So actually both of them this time work. So I have negative 1, 8. And that's my answer. All right, if you didn't get all those notes, I know I talk fast, pause the video and get down the rest of the notes. And we have one more, one tough one. Oh no, we have a you do. All right. Okay, here's a you do for you. Square root 2x plus 5 minus 1 equals x. So go ahead and do that one. This is number 17 in your book. Go ahead and try that. Just pause the video, try it out, so you do. Okay, how did you do? Well, what I'm going to do is isolate. I have square root 2x plus 5 equals x plus 1. I'm going to, because this is a square root, I'm going to go ahead and square both sides. The square of a square root is just what's underneath the radical sign. This I'm going to have to multiply out, and we just talked about that being x plus 1 times x plus 1. Which would give me x squared plus 2x plus 1. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. Subtract 5. I end up with 0 equals x squared minus 4. Okay, so it's a little different looking. I think what I'll do then is I have difference of squares, so 0 equals x plus 2x minus 2. And so x equals negative 2 or x equals 2. Well, those have to be checked. So hopefully you check them. So hopefully you check them. Here's my check. So I have x equals negative 2. And then I have x equals 2. Going back into the original equation, so I have square root 2 times negative 2 plus 5 minus 1 equals negative 2. Well, here I have 2 times negative 2 gives me negative 4. Okay, my camera cut out. I didn't realize that I had a time limit. So here's that check that we were doing. So still on your same note, sorry, cut off on me. I had two things I was checking. I was going to check x equals negative 2, x equals 2 into my original equation. So what I had then was 2 times negative 2 plus 5 minus 1 equals negative 2. Here I'll have square root negative 4 plus 5 minus 1 equals negative 2. Square root 1 minus 1 equals negative 2. And I have 1 minus 1 equals negative 2 and 0 equals negative 2. That's a big no. That one doesn't work. Okay, so I warned you some of them don't work. This one definitely doesn't work. That's a big red X. That one's not going to be one of them. So hopefully this one works. So I have 2 times 2 plus 5 minus 1 equals 2. So what I have here is 4 plus 5 is 9 minus 1 equals 2. Square root of 9 is 3 minus 1 equals 2. And 2 equals 2. And that looks to me to be a good one. That one will work. So my answer here, my root is 2. 2 there. Okay, now let's go to one that's a little more difficult. I left it over here. This one, and this is your last one, is an example of a double radical. Example double radical. Okay, well, a double radical looks like this. So there's my double radical. There's 2 of them in there. I've got to take care of them. My first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate one of the radicals. So number 1 is isolate one of the radicals. Okay, isolate one of the radicals. So I'm going to go ahead and isolate that one. So I'm going to add square root x plus 6 to one side. I'm going to add square root x plus 6 to the other side. What I have then is square root 2x minus 2 equals 1 plus square root x plus 6. From there, what I do is I have a square root, so I'm going to square both sides. So still doing the same thing that I've been doing before. My second step is to square both sides. Now this one is a little trickier because to square that is fine, but to square this, it's a little weird. So what I have here is 2x minus 2. That's the easy side. This one's the harder side, and I'm going to write it out instead of just trying to do it in my head because I don't know that I can do it in my head. So there you go. We're just going to use FOIL, right? So I'll show you the steps here. So first, that's going to give me 1, right? Outer plus square root x plus 6, right? Because it's 1 times square root x plus 6. That gives me x plus 6. Inner, so that's plus square root x plus 6, right? And last, here I have square root x plus 6 times square root x plus 6, which is really just, like doing this. So square root x plus 6 times square root x plus 6 is going to give me a plus, and isn't that great, x plus 6. I'm going to go ahead and combine, I'm just going to bring this down with it. I'm going to combine like terms. Well, the like terms are here and here. So what I have then is 2x minus 2 equals 1 plus 2 square root x plus 6. Oh, I was going to combine the 6 and the 1. So we're going to go with 7 there, right? Plus x. So I combine the 6 and the 1. Combine the 6 and the 1. I got 7. I combine these, and so there's 2 of them, right? Oh, I have 2 of those same things, so I have 2 of those. All right, now what do? Well, you have to do the same thing all over again. You have to isolate the radical. So it's a 2-step process. So you're going to take care of one step, and then the third thing you're going to do is, again, isolate the radical. I'll start all over. Sorry. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides, and I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. What I end up with is x minus 9 equals 2 square root x plus 6. And now I have something that I can handle, something that I know how to solve. I'm going to go ahead and square both sides. This just gives me, you know how to do that, x squared minus 18x plus 81 equals 2 times 2 squared is 4 times this quantity x plus 6. So what I need to do here then is I'm going to distribute, yeah, these problems are kind of long, so x squared minus 18x plus 81 equals 4x plus 24. And I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. I'm going to subtract 24 from both sides. And way down here in my pin tray, I get x squared minus 22x plus 57. Is that right? I have to cheat and look at my notes because I can't remember. Is that what it was? Yeah, 57 equals 0. Okay. I'm going to bring this up right over here. So I have x squared minus 22x plus 57 equals 0. Okay, just making sure it's still in view. I need to factor this. Two numbers, when you multiply them together, you get 57. And when you add them together, you get 22. 57 is one of those weird ones that you think, you know, it's prime, isn't it? Well, no, it's not prime. 19 goes into it, so it would be kind of a tough one to do. But anyway, 19 and 3 are going to be your answers here. So they're both going to be negative because I get a positive, and then I'm going to add them together and get negative 22. So either x equals 19 or x equals 3. You need to check those because especially when you do a double, there is a real good possibility that one of them isn't going to work. So you're going back into the original. So you're going to have these two. So I have square root, let's see, 2 times 19 minus 2 minus square root 19 plus 6 equals 1. 2 times 19 is 38. Minus 2 is 36. So square root of 36 is 6. 19 plus 6 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5. And 1 equals 1, and that one checks out. But you still have to do this, the 3. So I have square root, putting it back into this, 2 times 3. I can already see you guys rolling your eyes going, oh my gosh, is she serious? I really have to do all of this work? Can't I just guess or maybe just accept error? Be good, I guess. All right, 2 times 3 is 6, minus 2 is 4, square root of 4 is 2. And then I have, here I have 3 plus 6, that's 9, so I have minus square root 9 or minus 3 equals 1, negative 1 equals 1, and that's a big red X, that one doesn't work. So the only one that actually does work is 19, and 19 is my answer. Let's try to squeeze it in right here. 19 is my root. Oh, whew, those are tough. We'll be doing a lot of those in class so you can get used to them. All right, good luck.